Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another meeting of the Public Safety Subcommittee for the House Judiciary. It is Friday, March the 28th, 2025 at 1:32 p.m. We have one bill that is before us, so to speak, which is House Bill 883. And this is a bill, we actually just heard the cross-file of this bill in the Judiciary Committee earlier this week, which I think was Senate Bill 710 from Senator Nancy King. And I see we have the bill sponsor here with us as well. Colleagues, I don't know, and Delegate Wims, if you didn't get it, let me know. But there have been some amendments that have been done to House Bill 883. Part of those amendments are to conform the House bill to the language that's in the Senate bill as it passed out of the Senate. And then there are some other amendments to this bill, which colleagues, you should have received kind of like a little summary. The original version of this bill was really dealing with motor vehicles and vessels and criminal negligence of those vehicles and vessels. And so we have had a number of bills before the Judiciary Committee this session dealing with kind of this general theme about how do we address criminal negligence, whether it's with a motor vehicle or a vessel, boats and things like that. And so you will see an effort to try to address a lot of the bills that have come before the committee. You will see that you will with the reprint that is before you, is really trying to address all of those concerns that have been brought before the committee. So I'm going to ask, I see council is here. Maybe it might be helpful first for council to do a summary of kind of the amendments that are before the committee, and then we can entertain a motion on the bill to move the bill and then have further discussion.
That sounds good. So let me, everybody has the reprint, and I'm just going to walk through the 4 bills that are included in House Bill 883. So on page 1 to page 2, under the criminal law article, section 2-209, this is House Bill 977. It's Delegate Crosby, manslaughter by vehicle or vessel, increased penalties. And the cross file is SB 364, and it did not pass out of the Senate, and the House bill obviously was not passed. That is the first part of the bill, and that just increases the penalties for manslaughter by vehicle or vessel from 10 to 20 years for a first conviction and from 15 to 30 years for a subsequent conviction. If you go to page 2, in the middle of page 2, you will see what is House Bill 883. This is Delegate Wims' motor vehicle or vessel criminal negligence with the cross-file SB 710 amendments included as it passed out of the Senate. And I think Delegate Wims is with us, so I'll let him explain, Chair Williams, if that's okay, his section when we get there. But that's Delegate Wims's bill. And then at the bottom of page 2, all the way through to, there's not labeled, but to the second to last page, that is going to be Delegate Smith's bill, which is House Bill 676, boating accidents, duty to remain at the scene, rendering assistance, with the cross-file SB 123 amendments as it passed out of the Senate. And then on the second to last page, you're going to see Transportation Article 21-901.1. This is Delegate Grammer's House Bill 361, must appear death of another, reckless and negligent driving. The cross file is House Bill or Senate Bill 44. It passed out of the Senate favorable, so that is his bill without any changes as it was introduced in the House and as it passed out of the Senate.
Thank you, Holly, for that summary. And like I said, I guess if I can get a motion and a second, and then we can go into discussion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. Um, I guess we'll start I guess we'll start from the first part of the bill, which I'm just going to label them by the bill sponsor, the Crosby section, which starts at the bottom of page 1 and goes into, it's not enumerated, but that second page there with the enhanced penalties. Want to see first if folks have any questions about this section. Okay, doesn't seem like folks have questions. One of the things I noticed when kind of reviewing all of this, the Crosby bill by itself did have a bit of a fiscal note to it. I don't know if that has been.
Chair Williams.
Oh, no, that didn't have the
okay,
fiscal note. I'm
No,
sorry.
the only one that had a fiscal was House Bill 883, the Delegate Wims.
Okay, sorry. I'm sorry. But yes, it did not
Madam
have the
Chair.
fiscal note. But yes, sorry,
Oh.
Delegate Taylor, yes.
You don't mind, as we're going through these sections, I know you just explained it, but if you could just make sure we understand, it's hard to comment without really understanding what these pieces are.
Yeah, so yeah, so for the first part, like I said, the Crosby section, it really what it does, it enhances the penalties as it relates to criminal negligence with the use of a vehicle. And it defines vehicle as a motor vehicle, streetcar, locomotive, engine, or train. And this is a situation where the criminal negligence has resulted in the death of another person as a result of someone operating or driving a vehicle or vessel in a grossly
No,
negligent.
Chair Williams, I'm sorry to step in here. You're looking, so Delegate Crosby's bill is the House Bill 977. And that is the first part, and that is increasing this is the manslaughter by vehicle or vessel. It's increasing from 10 to 20. I just want to make sure. Okay, I just want to make sure we're on the right one.
Yeah. So it's already a felony under the code. Under the current language, for the first occurrence, the person can be found guilty of a felony and on conviction subject to imprisonment not to exceed 10 years or a fine not to exceed $5,000 or both. What is being proposed to increase that penalty from 10 years to 20 years. And then I think the second section, if this has been, I guess the second conviction, increasing, it's still a felony. It's currently a felony under current law, but increasing that penalty from 15 years to 30 years and a fine not to exceeding $10,000 or both. So that's really the change of it. Everything else is existing language under the law. So I hope that helps, Delegate Taylor.
It does. So are we, what's the rationale behind increasing the penalty there? Is there?
We don't have Delegate Crosby here. If I recall from the testimony from the bill hearing, I think the rationale was so that the person would spend more time incarcerated. The individual, I think this was based, I guess, off of a situation that happened in his district. And the individual that was convicted, I think, of 10 years, but ended up only serving like 5.5 years or so. And so I think the family felt as though that was too short of a period of time for someone to be incarcerated for something that resulted in the death of another. And so that's my recollection of the bill hearing. Okay. Delegate Simpson, I see you have your hand up.
There we go. Okay. For those people watching at home, is it possible and all of these the titles of these bills seem very close. Something happened while they're either in a boat or a vehicle or something. Is there any crossover with any of these bills? Or are
Um,
they all very, very separate?
I can speak to that. There is no crossover on any of these bills. They're separate. Although they're all related to motor vehicles or vessels they are dealing with different parts of the law and different articles.
Thank you.
Mhm. So the one thing I noted in this first part, with the fiscal note, it mentioned that looking at fiscal year 2024, there were roughly about maybe 23 people who were incarcerated under this particular penalty. Um, it's not clear if they were convicted of the first part, which is whether it was a first offense, or whether they were convicted of the second part, whether or not it was a second offense. But just to kind of give the committee and those listening, kind of the I guess kind of the depth of the number of individuals that this may potentially affect. Okay. Any questions? Yes, Delegate Valentine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is not a question, but rather a statement. And I certainly do not want to speak for Delegate Crosby, although I do remember his bill hearing. I can just tell you from a historic perspective that a lot of times, having been involved in fatal crashes, that families and whatnot, the penalty just seems to be lacking from a victim's perspective in a lot of these fatal car crashes. And I know from my personal experiences, that would be the reasoning behind the wanting to at least have the ability to have a longer sentence. Not saying it's going to be, just simply just the option is there, especially for individuals that are repeat offenders of similar type of incidents. And like I said, I'm not speaking for Delegate Crosby, but I'm just saying from a perspective of other jurisdictions that this has been something that has come up repeatedly during my career. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that perspective. All right. Well, if there are no other questions on this section, maybe we'll move on to the next page then, which I am going to label the whims section of the bill. And we do have Delegate Whims here. And so Delegate Whims, I don't know if you want to provide some additional context with this section. As the council mentioned, this is the version you see we have in front of us is as amended by the Senate. And so I don't know if you have any comments about the amendments that were done by the Senate and kind of your thoughts.
Well, first of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity to join you. We started working on this bill last year, and throughout the summer, we worked with the Senate. And we, as you saw, we did get unanimous for 833 in the Senate. That's the House bill, but the Senate passed it unanimously. And so we're very pleased, and we like the way that it's written. I did want to ask a question. Were you thinking about adding maybe Delegate Smith and Delegate Kramer's into the 833, my bill, or were you just thinking all three different bills? That was the question I had.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So what we were thinking is adding in the Delegate Crosby bill, Delegate Schmidt's bill, and Delegate Grammer's bill all into your bill is what the thought process was.
And of course, as I know, and you all know, it's the committees, whatever you decide to do. But I would say, from working with the Senate and literally for about 6 months with the Senate, that they like the bill as it stands, 833. But if you were going to add, you decided, it seems like Delegate Smith and Delegate Grammer, those two bills also passed the Senate. Seemed like that would maybe make it in conference maybe a little easier. I think the one with Delegate Crosby that didn't, that might be problematic on the Senate side. But of
Understood.
course, it's up to you, and we appreciate very much the opportunity to talk, and thank you for considering my bill along with the others.
Okay. Thank you, Delegate Wims, and thank you for that additional information. I have a little bit of the same concerns about the Crosby language, that it may cause a complication or a conference or something with the Senate, given the fact that the Senate did not move the cross-file of Crosby's bill either. So while I like Delegate Crosby personally, I agree it may pose a problem. Delegate Schmidt.
Thank you, Chair. I would support being added on to that 883. I'm good with that. And like I said, it did pass out of the Senate unanimously on February the 12th
Okay. Thank
with
you.
amendments.
Yes. Okay. Well, I think that's a good segue, Delegate Schmidt, to kind of your section of the bill, which is next. The colleagues, the version that you have in front of you reflects the amendments out of the Senate of the cross file of House Bill 676. And Delegate Schmidt, I don't know if you want to talk about the bill as amended or this section as amended.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's really a bill that aims, if there happens to be an accident in a vessel, that the situation would be where maybe two boats have solo individuals, that they would remain on the scene, sometimes to render some aid, maybe to help get people back in the boat. It's just very different than two vehicles, two cars, right? What we started to see, this was a situation in District 31 where somebody caused an accident and they left the scene of the crime. So I know you might remember the bill hearing. It was late at night that we had the family that was here. But that's really the crux of the bill, is to put some language in place for DNR and, for some guidelines with boating, that they remain on the scene in the event of an accident.
Yeah, I do remember the bill hearing. I remember the husband
Yeah.
whose wife was unfortunately killed in a boating accident.
Yep. Yep.
And so, yes, thank you.
I didn't get a chance to review the amendment personally. I mean,
Okay.
I support the amendment, as long as it's kind of in line with the bill. I believe it was just a language amendment, if I'm not mistaken.
I can help here, Delegate Smith. It was mostly, remember at the hearing, serious bodily injury, there was issues with what exactly that meant. And so if you look at the bill, it's paragraph 3, it cleans up that language to make it clear. And it was mostly just specifying exactly what serious bodily injury meant. And then under the rendering, giving the information, it cleaned up that part as well. So you're looking at subsection B.
Got it. I see it now. Thank you.
And are you okay with the amendments?
Yeah, I
Delegate
think
Smith?
I'm definitely okay with it. I'm pretty sure I presented the bill with the amendments as well, which is why.
Okay.
You did,
Okay.
Delegate, you had sponsor amendments that you proposed, and
Yep.
then and that's exactly what's on the bill.
Perfect.
All right, wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think the only thing I had noted, and I agree, I remember the hearing. I thought I feel like we needed to do something. One thing I noticed is a real minor thing, just specifying the penalties, which I think the intent was that they would be misdemeanors. And so I think if we just add that clarification in those sections there, I think that'll be perfectly fine. I had no concerns, and I don't know if there's any other questions or comments or concerns. Okay. All right, so that's the Schmidt section of the bill. And then we will move on to the last section of the bill.
Madam Chair, before you move
yes,
on.
Delegate Taylor.
Yeah, I
Yes.
do have a question. The section 3.2 on page, I guess that's page 2, mentions 10 years or a fine not exceeding 10,000. Why would that be different than the Crosby penalty? Why?
Yeah.
I mean, it would seem like if it's, sort of the same area, the penalties would be either the same or should be the same.
Yeah, I know this section is really amending a section of the natural resources article. And Crosby bill, I think, was an amendment to the criminal law article. Holly, I don't know if you have an explanation. It does seem as though, yes, I don't know how, I'm not as well versed with natural resources.
I'm gonna say, yeah, it's in natural resources. It's a different article, and it's. I mean, while there is some overlap, I think it's truly just because it's in a different article. So whether or not, again, part of the reason pulling these bills together was they are so different. And maybe it's all related, but of course, I mean, I somewhat agree with you. The penalty provisions and the differences, why they're also nuanced, I can't speak to that. And maybe it's something that should be, looked at some point. But just the fact that so many of these bills come in with different provisions and different penalty provisions, I can't speak to why the articles are different.
Yeah. I mean, it looks like the penalties in the Crosby section of the bill are much higher, just even based on what's currently in the criminal law article. And I think the difference there is the section of the criminal law article that Delegate Crosby is proposing to amend is related to a situation where a death has occurred because the individual was also intoxicated at the time of the accident. And so those references back to other sections in the criminal law article or the transportation article are referencing back to the DUI sections of the code. Versus in Schmidt's bill, this is a death that occurs simply because unfortunately it occurred. It's not because there was also a drug or alcohol use involved in the incident.
I'm just seeing gross negligence. I'm not even seeing, maybe 2.209 refers to,
Yeah, so
okay.
I guess I'm getting my pages. I guess this is not marked as page 3, but page 3 of the bill, where it talks about a person who violates this section having previously been convicted of a section under like 2-210, 2-503, 2-504, 2-505, 2-506, or 3214, or Article 21-902, the transportation article. I think the reason that penalty is so much higher, like I said, is because these are all referencing different parts where it talks about driving under the influence of alcohol, driving while intoxicated with a controlled dangerous substance, those parts of the criminal law article. Okay. Any additional questions, comments, or concerns about the Schmidt section of the bill? Delegate Crutchfield.
Yes, hi, Madam Chair. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding it because we're specifically talking about Delegate Smith's article in the natural resources section,
Yes.
correct? Okay. So I guess again, just piggybacking off of Delegate Taylor, it is our desire to make I'm looking at three. Let's see, I'm looking at three. I don't see what the, okay, I don't see the, okay, I'm looking at the sections with the penalties in that again. And is it our desire to reduce those down to misdemeanors, or are they to stay felonies in both of those sections? And I'm talking about one where a person who violates a subsection and who know, I guess that should be new or reasonably should have known, right?
Right.
Okay, so we probably need to do a word change on that. But in that where it talks about is guilty of a felony and on conviction is subject to imprisonment not exceeding 5 years or a fine not exceeding 5,000, is it your desire to reduce that to a misdemeanor, or is that to remain a felony?
It's up to the committee, how the committee feels about it.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
I will clarify, item 2, Chair Williams, that's where we are going to, where it says the 1 year or fine not exceeding 3,000 or both, and number 2, that should have misdemeanor in there. That was an oversight. It would be misdemeanor, assumed to be a misdemeanor, but we just spoke about this and I double checked that a misdemeanor needs to go in those provisions there for clarity.
Correct.
Okay.
I think what Delegate Crutchfield is referring to is the section right after that.
Sure. Yeah, where it does say felony.
Yeah.
Can you guys tell us where you are in the document?
I know I was trying to, I just couldn't.
I know, because.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but
Sorry.
because it's so heavily amended, there are not pages, but if you
Right.
count the pages, it's page 4.
Mhm.
And it's midway in the
Yeah,
page.
kind of in the middle of the page there.
Yes. Yeah, and there's 2 paragraphs that talk about violations, and one talks about 5 years and 5,000, and the other one talks about imprisonment not to exceed 10 years or 10,000. And I just wanted to clarify that. And I also see that we need to do some wordsmithing because there's a couple of places where it says no instead of should have known or knew.
Mhm.
Take care of that.
Okay, that's my only questions. Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you. All right, any other questions about this section before we move on to the next section of the bill? All right, and then the next section is an amendment to the transportation article. And this is the what I call the grammar section of the bill, based off of House Bill, I think 361. And this is the one, we've had this bill come before our committee. I know I've been on this committee for 6 years now, and I've heard this bill, I think, all 6 of those years. So this bill has come before us quite a number of times, and this is regarding a situation where a person is found guilty of reckless driving. And I think the family has come in a number of times and testified in support of this bill, where the penalty is simply a fine. And what currently happens is that I believe the person will receive the penalty and will just simply pay the fine. And that is really the end of the responsibility of the person who is found guilty of reckless driving. What this bill is proposing to do is requiring the person to appear in court, and also preventing the person from prepaying the fine before they appear in court. And um, and then it has a provision where the court can waive the requirement to appear in court, and allow the person to prepay the fine. I think one of the concerns that I've heard over the years about this is honestly just kind of if the penalty is a fine, forcing it cuts both ways. I think the victims want to have their day in court. They want to confront the individual that may have, you know, killed or harmed their loved one, which I absolutely understand that want, that grief, that anger, that desire. Um, but then you also have the individual who is owning to the fact that they were driving recklessly, pays their fine, which is what is all that is allowed under the code, or required under the code, I should say, and having to take off a day of work and things like that, where you may be causing a situation that can cause a very ugly confrontation there at the courthouse. Um, just a thought. So, I don't know, if people have questions about this section or not. Delegate Valentine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm not going to speak for Delegate Grammer because I don't see him here on the call. I did speak with the Senate, Senator Mary Beth Carosa on this yesterday, and obviously you know the history of this bill as well. And from a victim standpoint, I think absolutely. I mean, the victims, they want to be heard if at all possible. And you're absolutely correct. I'm seeing in this provision, so it may still be the must appear portion can be waived. Is that not correct the way I'm reading this? If shown for good cause, where they may still not be able to be heard. Is that correct?
It does say that the court
Could waive.
may, for good cause shown, waive the requirement to appear in court. That is correct in this version of the bill.
And council can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is exactly how it was passed unanimous out of the Senate, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
That's correct.
It was favorable out of the Senate, and this is as Delegate Grammer introduced it.
Correct. So I'm speaking on behalf of the advocates that I've spoke to about this that are and the proponents of this bill that strongly want me to work on behalf of this bill. And I know one of the concerns from the senator was, and I think this might speak to Delegate Wims, and I don't want to misquote him, but was concerned if this was included with several bills that may not make it. As well. And I just don't want it to be caught up with other bills that might not make it as well. So I'm very supportive of this bill, and I just wanted to let the committee know that.
Thank you. Thank you, Delegate Valentine. Question, so are you saying, Delegate Valentine, the advocates who you spoke with would prefer for this to move separately by itself as a standalone bill?
Not the advocates. Senator Carozza was concerned that if it was put into a multi-bill bill, that it may not go because maybe one of the other bills wouldn't move. But would certainly, if the intent of the committee is to move this along with these others, whatever path the committee decides on.
Okay. Right.
But I'm looking at some of these bills. I didn't know if maybe Delegate Crosby's might not, because all of the bills except for his have passed through the Senate.
That is correct.
That was my concern as well,
Understood.
of having one that may cause it from being able to be accepted by the Senate.
Okay. Okay, yeah, understood. Yeah, all of them have moved out of the Senate except for Delegate
Mhm.
Crosby's. Yes, okay. All right. Any other questions or comments? You know, the one thing I was thinking, because like I said, we've had this bill a number of different times. Actually, I don't even think Grammar was always the sponsor. I think it's been different bill sponsors over the years. But the issue's still the same nevertheless. And, you know, as a way of kind of dealing with some of the concerns, and I know this is much different than what it passed out of the Senate with, maybe proposing that, you know, the victim, because I don't know if all the victims would want to appear. You know, maybe if the victim's family petitioned the court for the person to appear before the court, before the individual prepays their fine, um, maybe that might be a good compromise to kind of deal with some of the concerns that have been raised over the years. Delegate Pastor, I see your hand.
Thank you. Yes, because I've had a couple of constituents who've asked about this, and so now I'm generally confused. So must appear, whose bill is that?
That's Delegate Grammer's bill. And the
Okay.
cross file sounds like it's Senator Carozza.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I do know, Madam Chair, this is, I think, year 7, if not year 8 for this bill. I mean, very, very, very strong thoughts on this bill by a lot of folks.
Understood, understood. And I think this is why it's for discussion before our subcommittee today, because there are very strong thoughts with regards to this bill. And like I said, I know it's come up on a number
So
of
can I ask you a question then on what you just mention? Would it then kind of put it in reverse where it would default to a payable unless good cause was shown by a judge to have the individual appear? Is that kind of what you were thinking?
Yeah, but not even with the good cause, but yeah, kind of in the reverse, where if the victim's family petitions the court for the person to come before the court, it would be decided by a judge whether or not the circumstances warrant that appearance or not. And then the judge can make that call like, yes, this person should appear to the court before paying their fine, or can make the determination that no, the individual does not need to appear before the court and can then go ahead and pay the fine assessed.
My only concern with that would be if in real time, if someone was issued say just a traffic citation, immediately paying, it wouldn't catch up or have enough time, would be my concern, or how that would be put in practical purposes. If someone was issued a citation, the defendant immediately paid, or within a day or two, if it wasn't a pre-planned charging event by, say, the prosecutor's office with working in conjunction with law enforcement to know that this was being issued.
Right.
Because I'm thinking they would almost run, if it was paid immediately, they wouldn't have that opportunity. That's my
Yeah.
only question about that.
Understood, understood. And maybe we would have a mechanism where if someone is guilty of reckless driving, then a citation's not issued. And I don't know, we would have to kind of figure out logistically how that would work. Uh, Delegate Taylor.
I'm really trying to sort this out, so bear with me.
So it's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. I am trying to figure out the difference between Grammar's bill piece and Wim's bill piece. One is criminally negligent and does not end up in a death, but subject to imprisonment not to exceed 6 months or a fine not to exceed 5,000, and is a misdemeanor. But the grammar bill is contributing to an accident that results in a death, and there's a fine.
Yeah.
There just seems to be some, it's just not equal, or unless I'm missing something, because it does say under Wims's bill that it's not under section C, it's not a violation of this section for a person to drive, operate, or control a motor vehicle in a negligent manner as defined in 21901-1, which is where Grammar's bill falls, which is the transportation article. Is that the difference? Like under the transportation article, there are less severe penalties? I don't know.
Right.
Not being a lawyer, it's really tough,
Um,
or judge, it's really tough to cipher through this.
Yeah, well, I am a lawyer and it's a lot. So, Holly, do you have a answer?
Again, this just goes to the penalties are different in different articles. It's just when the legislation went through, the transportation article is different. This is the same with the Delegate Wims issue. A lot of these bills, they don't necessarily overlap, but it's very similar issues, but in different parts of the code, and it's different applicability depending on which article you're in, and for example, Delegate Wims is criminally negligent under the criminal law article versus for the transportation article, you're dealing with something totally different for Delegate Grammars. So yeah, I wish I could offer more. Again, these penalties are so nuanced depending on which section and which article you are dealing with.
Okay,
Yes, Delegate Pastor. Well, I saw Delegate Simpson had her hand up first, and then Delegate Phillips, and then I can come to you.
Well, I'm glad we're having this discussion because it is very informative. The hearings have been very informative. Not necessarily clear. So it's interesting to me that suspension of a license, someone driving on a suspended license is actually a requirement to appear. But if I run somebody over and kill them, I can just pay the fine?
You're referring to the grammar section of the bill, I take it.
Well, all of them. I'm just a little
Right.
confused. Like, it's really interesting to me. And I mean, it doesn't seem like there's too many other than like a DUI that requires an appearance. I mean, I do feel as far as the Crosby goes, since it didn't come over, then I guess that part needs to be taken out, right? I think we already, and we're
Well,
just
I don't
gonna-
think we definitively voted on it, but a couple people have expressed that concern.
So, and I know we don't like so this came over. Are we all kind of feeling like it's ready?
This, the sense that I get is we get these bills every year, right? With regards to whether it's drunk driving, reckless driving, criminal negligent driving, wanton willful, behavior, all different types of categories of levels of driving with that in all the cases brought before us where the unfortunate result is the death of someone. And so, we're being asked year after year to do something about these situations, I guess, in an effort to try to change people's behavior, whether it's to encourage people not to drive while drinking, driving while, not intoxicated on a controlled substance, or just being careful when they're driving and not driving recklessly. Um, and I think we're charged with trying to figure out a way to bring, and I think this is sort of what I think Delegate Taylor was trying to get at. Is there a way to deal with all of these issues and bring some consistency to the code, um, as well as to address these scenarios that have resulted in very horrific outcomes? And, look, I know we're only supposed to be here for an hour. If we can't get to this in an hour, I completely understand. Because this is, a lot of things all at once and it's not easy.
Yeah, I don't want
Even
to
as,
hold it. I don't want to hold
right,
it up if you've heard this for 7 years, 10 years, whatever, and it's definitely something that needs to be done. And I know this isn't necessarily the forum, but I definitely feel like, Delegate Valentine is very able to give us a work group during the because I feel like I needed to get a little bit more educated about this because it seems like every one of these cases that come, I'm left with my mouth dropped open. It's not something that I was aware of. And it is something that I feel like we have a responsibility to the citizens of Maryland to make something reasonable,
right.
you know?
Yeah, and I think part of the problem is we deal with this as a Judiciary Committee because it results in the death of someone. And therefore, most of the time this falls sort of under the criminal law article. But then there's these sections that are coming before us that were maybe originally created by the Environment and Transportation Committee, because they fall under the transportation article, or were dealt with in E&T because they fall under the natural resources article because they deal with boating accidents and things like that. And so I think that's part of the reason why we may have some of these inconsistencies, because some of this is going back and forth between different committees at times when these issues come up. So anyway, that's my little soapbox. I'm gonna go to I said Delegate Phillips, then Delegate Pastor, then Delegate Valentine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. um, I've got to, we've gone around and around on a lot of different things, but what I am comfortable with, so I will just share my perspective on this. The three bills that actually passed the Senate that we heard that have been vetted with amendments, I'd like to see us move those. On the grammar bill, I think the provision that was added that gives the individual an opportunity to waive or to request the ability not to appear is a significant change to the previous years. And it really kind of addresses this issue that there may be occasions when it's in the best interest of justice for them not to appear. However, I think Delegate Simpson's point, there are definitely things that you have to appear for, which are far less significant than the death of an individual. The other thing to Delegate Taylor's point, in many of these instances that we're talking about, where there's a difference in the penalty, there are two pieces. One is culpability, right? And we're looking at was a person more culpable in one than the other, and maybe the penalties differ according to the culpability. The second piece is where did it occur and how did it occur? So voting is different than driving. And so I think there's some nuances there that have come about with penalties over time, because we're looking both at culpability and the means to which one of these incidents occurred. And so I'm generally comfortable with the fact that there are going to be different penalties depending upon where you are and how it occurred. And then the third piece is I do think we should move these bills, whether it's today or we meet on Monday. But I really am strong. I mean, I think Delegate Crosby's bill is actually not a bad bill, but we're pulling all of these bills together in one. I'm assuming for the purpose of consolidating and moving them through the process. But I just think we may be hampering bills that really are ready to move forward by lumping them all together.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Delegate Phillips, for that feedback. I had Delegate Pastor next on my list. She went out, then came back in. Delegate Pastor, I don't know if you still have your question, if you're back with us, but you're muted. Okay. All right, we'll come back to Delegate Pastor. We'll go to Delegate Valentine and we'll come back.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say, to speak to the, not to the criminal negligence, but for a simple negligent driving. Think about if you're a family member and all things being equal, you're involved in a fatal crash and the vehicle goes off the roadway for whatever reason. It's simply a negligent driving. One defendant driver, it's a negligent driving. The second is a driving suspended, and those paths are completely different. If the individual that strikes your family member is a driving suspended case, your case is going to go with the state's attorney's office. You're going to have victim services, all of these things. You have your day in court. The driver that strikes your family member is not suspended, everything else being the same, and you're kind of out there by yourself, and you don't get near the input or the assistance. And I just wanted everyone to think about that for a negligent driving case, those two paths, simply by being something as a driving suspended, and you're going down a different trajectory as a victim's family member. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Delegate Valentine. Delegate Pastor.
I'm sorry, my computer died. So I think Delegate Valentine just sort of pulled it together. I'm going back and forth from my emails from people, and in each of the case, someone has died and they just felt like nothing really happened in terms of the perpetrator. And it was in each case where maybe we all have seen the emails, I don't know, where the person, it was negligent driving on the other part. So I'm back to Delegate Phillips. I just want, if they're coming together or separate, that we know we can make folks feel that something was done, that something happened, that under the circumstances is reasonable and just. And I'm pretty sure right now, I'm just completely confused. So I just need, as we make a decision, that just something brief is said, if possible, about the situation and the penalty.
Okay.
I'm probably not as worried about the appearance unless they don't have to appear and they can just pay a fine. That's no in my book.
All right.
Thank you.
So if I'm hearing everything correctly, it sounds like people do not feel comfortable moving forward with the Crosby section of the bill, just given its current posture. It didn't move out of the House. It has now moved out of the Senate. And so therefore, I guess in the interest sort of time and sort of kind of where we are, I think and I don't know procedurally how we should do this because we sort of have a motion and a second on the floor. But it sounds like everyone wishes to kind of remove that section of the bill. So I'll just put a pin in there in that and leave that there. On the second part of the bill, so therefore we don't even need to worry about these penalties. Okay. The WIMS part of the bill, which is the second portion of the bill, it sounds like everybody feels comfortable with what is being presented there and that it's an amendment to the criminal law article. The cross-file, like I said, we heard that hearing a few days ago, and that has moved over from the Senate. Delegate Wims is still with us. Delegate Wims, There was, it was mentioned a little bit earlier, there was a fiscal note to your bill. And I don't know if that has been addressed, if the Senate dealt with that, or if that's something we still need to concern ourselves with.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Senate did address it. They think the note will be considerably lower, and that's why it came out of the Senate unanimously.
Okay, okay. All
Thank
right,
you.
thank you for that. All right, so the amended version hopefully will remove that fiscal note then. The Schmidt bill, I think, or the Schmidt section of the bill, I think everyone is fine with. Just maybe some cleanup of the language, it sounds like. But you know, that was a very horrific boating accident. I think this does provide a lot of additional guidance for our boating community. Um, and so I don't know, Delegate Schmidt.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I'm good either way. I mean, it's passed unanimously out of the Senate the way, way it was with some slight amendments on language. We can move it separate. We can move it together. I'm good either way. I do kind of agree with the work that we've done here in subcommittee. It is a concern if we do attempt to move Delegate Crosby's bill with it, it could get stalled. I'll let the committee members decide on what they want to do with Delegate Grammer's bill. I mean, I think all the language kind of makes sense. We just don't want it to get stalled on the other side.
Understood. Absolutely. Okay. Delegate Phillips, you still have your hand up. I don't know if you had anything else or if that was just left over from.
Just left over. My apology.
No worries. Just wanted to make sure. All right. Okay. And then we have Delegate Grammer's bill, or grammar section of the bill, which it seems like people feel a little bit more comfortable with this year's version than they have in years past. Well,
Yeah.
maybe I should ask it a different way. Does anyone have any objections to the grammar section of the bill? Maybe that's a better way to ask it. Delegate Valentine.
No, Madam Chair, I do not. I think with the safety net involved with the where they can petition the court, I think that's the defendant can petition the court, to do that part of it, I think is good. I also wanted to just put on the record, I'm fine with Delegate Crosby's bill as well, but if it impedes these other three pieces of legislation, I would like to see the other three go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any other thoughts or comments? Delegate Tolles, you've been pretty quiet today. I don't know if you have anything you want to add.
I'm just listening and well, first, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, everyone, for your feedback. This is a lot of bills into one. And yeah, I don't know if we want to kind of get a feel from JPR as looks like they've made, some of these changes. What folks are saying with the grammar amendment, will that get through? Because then we have to come back if it does not get through, or have either a meeting or would it be a conference committee?
Well, the grammar bill actually is passed out of JPR. So
The
it's
grammar
still-
portion of this, I'm saying.
Yeah, the grammar portion of this is passed already out of the Senate.
Okay.
Yeah, so they must be fine with it if it's already passed out of the Senate.
Okay. So I don't know. I know you said an hour, so I didn't know if you want people to process this, how much you want to vote out today, but
Yeah, I mean, I know
either
that
way-
criminal law is scheduled to meet at 2:30.
okay.
And so I don't know if we have any members on here that are also members of that subcommittee. So I was just trying to be respectful of any folks who might have to leave in 5 minutes to hop onto criminal law.
Okay. Well, I'll just continue listening. Thank you, Madam Chair, for asking.
Okay, sure. Delegate Taylor, I see you have your hand up.
Is it appropriate for me to move the bill in a certain posture now?
I guess I'm going to defer to Holly on that. Because
We're in the middle of a motion. I guess.
yeah,
we have to be-
that's my concern, unless I guess maybe the maker of the
Well,
motion.
my recommendation is that that the maker of the motion rescind the motion and we make a new motion, then we make a new motion.
Understood. And I think Delegate Phillips was the maker of the motion. If you want to amend your
No.
motion.
I was not the maker of the motion, but
Oh, I'm sorry. Who was the maker? Was it you, Delegate Valentine?
I will
Oh, sorry
rescind that
about that.
motion. I will
Okay.
rescind the motion.
All right, so Delegate Valentine has rescinded his motion, and so I guess I will entertain a new motion then.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Delegate Taylor.
I move that we move favorable on House Bill 883 with the Wims amendment, Schmidt's amendment, Grammer's amendment, and take out the Crosby amendment.
Okay. Is there a second on that motion?
second,
Okay.
second on the motion.
All right, it's been moved by Delegate Taylor and second by Delegate Phillips. And then Delegate Tomlinson, I don't know if you have anything to add. I just want to make sure. No.
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay. Delegate Tolles, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and I apologize, I misspoke. I meant to say the Crosby, and not the grammar amendment, but, Will, where did that stand? Can you remind me where that stood in terms of JPR?
Yeah, the Crosby crossfile has not moved out of JPR.
Okay, so the thought is, okay.
Yes. Okay. And then Delegate Conway, I don't know if you're here, if you have any.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, good to have you. All right. Okay, well, it has been properly moved in second. I don't know if there's any further discussion on what is in front of us. I know there's a little wordsmithing that needs to take place in certain sections that was previously discussed. And I'm gonna just recap for council and for our listening audience. I think on what is not marked as page 4, but is page 4 of the PDF. Just clarifying under section 2.1 and 2.2 that those penalties are misdemeanors. And then under section 3.1 and 3.2, just changing a person who violates this subsection who knew or reasonably should have known, I think was the concern there. And then near the bottom of the page, on section 3, a person convicted of a violation of this section, just clarifying that that's a misdemeanor as well. And that was all I had in my notes in terms of any wordsmithing. Delegate Tolles and then Delegate Taylor. And Delegate Tolles, you're muted. And I don't know if you're talking. You're muted, Delegate Tolles. Oh, you don't have anything. Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Okay, Delegate Taylor.
Thank you,
I'll
Madam
lower my
Chair.
hand.
Okay.
I recall on the floor that the name was incorrect, Sergeant Patrick Keep. Didn't they add a name to this bill in the Senate?
So a lot of these had a name. Actually, I think all three, at least 3 of them did, but I didn't include the short title names because there are 3 bills combined. So I don't know how you want to address that, Chair Williams, but yes, you're correct. There was an amendment on a name change, and 2 of the other bills, Delegate Grammars and the other one, I believe, also had names attached as well.
And I apologize, I forgot one other change. I know Delegate Schmidt, you'd mentioned you wanted to be on the bill as well, if we were to move these as a package. Okay. Yes, Delegate.
Yes.
It was just that it was kept, if we had keep for one of the name, and it came up today as well, KEPP.
And was that on the Delegate Wims's bill? Or do you remember which one that was on, Delegate Pasteur?
I don't know, but I remember it just because it said keep, and I thought it was strange. The person
Yeah.
kept, and then I saw it today as well.
Madam Chair, if I would say, this is called the Sergeant Kept Bill, Sergeant Kept Act, I'm sorry.
Oh, Sergeant Kept Act. Okay.
Yes.
That's where that came from. That Delegate Pasteur.
Which for the officer, you might remember, that was almost killed. He lost both his legs. That's what it was
He
about.
was being dragged. Is that the one that was being dragged down the street? Oh, wow. Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yes.
Yes. But that's why we named it that, the Sergeant Kept Act. And he did come to testify. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And just it says Sergeant Patrick Kept Act. So his first name is in there too, and that's on the Senate bill,
Yes,
710.
yes.
Yeah. But Madam Chair, I think I didn't include that in my motion, so that might have to be a separate motion because depending upon which of these amendments get included, we might have several names on the bill.
Yeah, and I think for stylistic purposes for DLS, this person, Holly can correct me if I'm wrong. I think if we had a name, I think it would have to just be one name. Is that correct, Holly?
I need to check on this. It would have to be all of the names. So I just checked and we have the Sergeant Kep Act, and then the other one that had a name was Crosby. So Delegate Crosby's is we don't need to worry about that one. But then Delegate Grammer's was Sherry and Christian's Law. But I don't know if the individuals would want to be on a bill. For example, that's just tricky. I think
Right.
you would want to check to make sure that, for example, Sherry and Christian's Law, if Delegate Grammer is okay with putting them with Sergeant Kep and Sergeant Kep's okay, and I can put all the names together as one short title. But I would just want to make sure, just like with sponsorship, that everybody would be okay with that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then Delegate Schmidt, you did not have a name on your bill, did you? Okay. I see you shaking your head no.
And my hand is still up.
We
just
did
because
not.
I'm
Hey,
like-
Tony,
Okay. Oh,
That-
Delegate Taylor, sorry.
one of the
like-
emails I responded to was like a woman
Delegate
named Jenna
Thompson.
about Blueprint. You might want to check.
We can mute. Oh, there we go. Okay. Delegate Taylor.
I was just saying, is it appropriate for us to let you know that we'd like to be added? Or do we do that when we're voting?
I think we do that when we're voting.
Thank you.
Okay. So it sounds like we have kind of the stylistic changes. I guess my question for the committee, do we want to add back in the Sergeant Patrick Kemp Act? But then I feel like we need to, and I thought Delegate Grammer, I thought he was a member of this subcommittee. Oh, he's not a member of this subcommittee. Oh, okay. All right. So we would probably need to check with him then about the title with regards to the Sherry and Christian's Law. It sounds like then if that's a deal breaker for him.
I think, Chair, if we want to check, I can always add that for when we vote in committee. But if you wanted to move the bill as it is, and then of course we were going to add, I'm sure, sponsorship, and we can also make the short title change. If Delegate Wims wants to check to make sure Sergeant Kep is okay, of course, and then if Delegate Grammer wants to check with his individuals to make sure they're okay, and we can combine and do all that in the committee vote when we add sponsorships.
Okay. Okay. Delegate Wims, is that okay with you since you're here?
Yes, thank you very much. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I think we've kind of worked on, ooh, that was a lot. Any other questions or discussions? All right, I guess, does everyone feel comfortable then moving forward with the vote today?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, well then I'm going to go ahead and call the roll. I will start first with Delegate Conway.
Yes.
Okay, Delegate Crutchfield.
Yes.
Delegate Congola. Okay, not here. Delegate Pastor.
Yes.
Okay, Delegate Phillips.
Yes.
Delegate Schmidt.
Yes.
Delegate Simpson.
Yes.
Okay, Delegate Taylor.
Yes.
Delegate Tolles.
What?
Sorry, my tongue was like tripping over itself. Delegate Tolles.
Yes.
Okay, Delegate Tomlinson.
Yes.
Delegate Valentine.
Yes.
Okay. All right, the bill as amended, it passes. So, thank you guys so much. I wasn't certain if we were going to get to a conclusion today because I knew it was a lot that was before the committee, and was like, oh boy, we may have to come back on Monday, but we don't have to come back on Monday now, unless the chair decides to assign us something else to tackle. So, that is all that we have before us right now for the Public Safety Subcommittee. And if anything changes, I will certainly let you know. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciate all of your hard work on this.
Thank you.
All right.